Welcome to Sew with Monty. Today we're going to continue with our How to Use Your Serger machine, and we're going to talk about the differential feed and what it can do. And in this little sample here, as you can see, I have two different versions of what this differential feed can do for you. The top edge is basically a gathering stitch that you can use with your differential feed, and the bottom edge is a very clever hem type that they don't really tell you in the book. It's much like the rolled hem, only using both needles. So let me go ahead and get set up with the machine, and I'll take you into the differential feed and show you how to do this. So first, let's revisit the dial that causes the differential feed to work. And this will be in different places on your machine depending on your make and model. Mine is on the left-hand side on the back. Sometimes it'll be on the right-hand side. Sometimes it will even be inside the housing underneath where your looper feet are. The 1.0 is the normal setting. That means it's neutral, and no stretching or gathering will happen at this point. It'll just be, the only thing that will affect this stitch right here is the fabric itself. Sometimes the fabric, if it's really thick, might pucker a little bit, so you might have to adjust your differential feed to relax it, which is going down. Sometimes you'll sew on a fabric that automatically stretches when you're sewing at neutral, and you might have to increase the gathering a little bit to control it, like a rib. So these stitches on this differential feed, the adjustments rather, can be used to regulate your fabric and keep it nice and flat. It can also be used to gather or to cause a lettuce edge. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to show you the gathering effect of the differential feed and how to use that. So let me go ahead and get set up and we'll go for that. So the first thing I've done, I'm going to show you how to gather at the fullest amount of differential feed. So I've set my dial on the 2 on the side, and I've got a little sample here, and I've also pre-done this so that I can kind of show you what is happening. What I've done for my stitch, let's see that everybody can see this, yes. So what I've done for my stitch to cause this gathering up here, I've had to loosen my needles, my outside needle a little bit, so I've turned it to 3, the 3 setting, to relax it a little bit, because the differential feed, when it gathers all that fabric, it causes tension on this needle, so I have to relax that a little bit. I also have to relax my upper and lower looper to about 3.5. So I'm going to put both of these on 3.5, and I'm setting my first needle on 3 and my second needle on 4 to get this effect. Now, as far as stitch width and length, I'm going to set my width on 5 and my length on 4, which is the longest length I need, so that it really takes a nice good bite in there. So the width is on 5, the length is on 4. Loosen that first needle up, your outside needle to 3, your inside needle stays at 4, and your loopers need to be relaxed a little bit to 3.5, 3.5. Now that's on my machine. What you want to do is play with your own settings and experiment and see what you need. I find that a little looser is better, but play with your machine and see what you get. And don't forget, once you get what you like, make a little note of it like this, so that when you come back and you're looking for what you need, you can just look it up in your little sample. Okay, so let me set up and we'll get started with the actual sewing. So now I'm setting up my machine. I've just got my fabric in here right about where the needles are. And I want to be very careful not to cut too much off over here, because I could cause it to bind up. I'm letting the machine do the job. I'm just going to guide it along with my fingers and have a very light touch. So let's go ahead and sew this seam. So as you can tell, you don't need to go really fast, but you want to try to keep a steady speed. And it makes a really nice little gathering stitch, so that if you want to pre-gather something instead of doing the normal basting stitch and pulling it in, you can use this instead. Now on this side, I'm going to turn down the ratio to about half. Instead of being 2, it's going to be in between neutral and 2, and show you what this will do. Now this is a lot less gathering, But the purpose of this would be maybe to do the sleeve cap on a sleeve, or any place where you're just trying to ease in the seam a little bit. Going along nice and slow. You can go a little bit faster than that, but just to show you. See, and this would be very subtle. Like if I wanted to put gathering in a sleeve cap, and I don't want to do the basting stitch and pulling it. See how nice that is? You can just go from notch to notch and make a beautiful sleeve cap gathering. So that's the differential feed for the gathering part. So let's move on, and I'll show you the differential feed for the stretching part. Now for the stretching part, we're going to do something kind of clever. We're going to use this hem stitch, which is not really in your books, but I love to use it. It's like a rolled hem, only we're going to leave the outside needle in. So we're going to use both needles. And the why I like it so much is that it's a little bit wider than the regular rolled hem. And in some occasions, that's actually kind of nice. Now mine's a little bit spaced out here, a little bit more open. You can use it this way, or you can tighten it up a little bit. Also, I recommend, if you're doing it on a finished garment, get the thread, the specialty thread that's made for the rolled hem. Woolly nylon is good, and they also have other threads that are actually made to do a rolled hem. So let me get set up and I'll show you how to do this. Okay, so this rolled hem with the two needles has some unique features that you'll need to do to your machine. The first thing you want to do is on the side of your machine over here, and let's make sure everybody can see this. We want to get all of our settings properly done on our dials. So the first one I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the lettuce edge, so I want it to slightly stretch. So I'm going to go down below neutral as far as I can go, which is 0.7. And then I'm going to use this dial right here, and I'm going to turn it. This is my stitch length. I'm going to turn it to the rolled hem setting, which is R right there. I'm also going to take the stitch width and turn it to R as well, right here. So all three of these settings will be the lowest on the differential feed, which is 0.7, R, and R on my stitch width and length. Okay, let me turn the machine back around because I want to show you a very unique little feature on this machine. Let's see, are we there? Good. So if you open your front panel, now this will be different on every machine. Mine actually comes out as a separate piece. Some of you may have a little dial that slips out this way. But what we're going to do is take out the stitch width former. Now we have two needles in here, two little points that come off the throat plate that create the stitch width. And to make it narrow, like the rolled hem, you need to release the outside of the stitch width former. So on my machine, let's see if I can come in just a little bit so you can see a little bit better. There's a little lever here, and I'm just going to push on this lever right here to release it. Whoa, came right out. Let's go a little slower than that. You always want to make sure when anytime you're adjusting anything in here, make sure your needles are up too. So get them out of the machine. Let me put this back in and release. Let's try it again. So if I push on this little lever, there's a little yellow triangle there, as you can see. This is my stitch width former, and it goes up underneath the needles, and it makes the stitch wider by adding an extra little piece of metal for it to go around. But I want to take it out because I want it to be narrow. So I've got a little lever here. I'm going to push it, and then this little stitch width former comes right out of the machine. And I'm just going to lay it aside, and we'll put it back on when we're done with our rolled hem. So all those adjustments need to be done before you do a rolled hem. So all the dials over here need to be set to R, and I'm going to put my lettuce edge, so I'm going to put it on 0.7 for my differential feed, and remove my stitch width former. Check your machine to see which way you do it, because there's several different ways of removing that stitch width former. Now, once we have this set up, I want to talk to you about the tension. So let's go up a little bit here. The tension needs to be set quite uniquely for this particular stitch. So what I have to do here to get this stitch to be successful, I'm going to leave my needles on 4, but I'm going to loosen this up just a little bit to 4.5, or tighten this up just a little bit to 4.5, and then I'm going to really tighten up my lower looper to 6.5. That's the unique setting right there. You want this lower looper much tighter than the rest, because the lower looper is going to get tight and it's going to pull the upper looper thread over. Let's see if I can show you here. It pulls the upper looper thread over. Let me get a little closer here. Over so that it touches the inside safety stitch, see? So that the upper looper is the blue here. It wraps over the edge of your fabric, and that's how it gets its name, the rolled hem. So let's go ahead and try one and see what we do. Now that we have all of our settings correct, our tension and our differential feed and all of our dials on the side and our stitch width former removed, we're going to go ahead and try our stitch. Now I'm using the side that's the stretchiest on my fabric, and I'm just going to go slow. This is a slow stitch to begin with, so don't let it alarm you. And I make sure my fabric's nice and snug in there and close to the needles. I don't want to cut off a lot of fabric, so I'm just going to keep it just kind of close to the blade and go steady, nice and slow and steady. Now, if you're sewing this stitch and you want to put a little bit more ruffle on it, you can put a little pressure on it right here in front with your finger. Not too much though. Don't pull so hard on your fabric that you might bend a needle or break a needle. But you can put just a little bit of pressure on it. Just hold it steady, and it will cause it to give a little bit more ruffle to your fabric than just the 0.7 is going to give it. But slow is welcome. You don't want to go too fast because you'll mess up your stitch. So here's what we have. We have a nice little stitch that makes a pretty finish on a hem. Now you can see little white sections in here. If you use a specialty thread like a woolly nylon or a fabric or a thread that's made for roll hem, which they do have, it will close up all those little white places, and it'll be a nice smooth ribbon of thread. Sometimes you can even get it with a sheen on it, and it makes a beautiful finish. And that's how you do a rolled hem.